Welcome to the Swine Health Blackbelt Podcast, the latest swine health research digested for you. My name is Dr. 𝗴𝗂𝗀𝗁𝘁. I'm the host of the podcast. And joining me for this week's episode is Dr. Gabriela Martinez. Dr. Martinez is a swine nutritionist with CSA Animal Nutrition. Dr. Martinez, welcome to the podcast. We had a chance to get to know each other here before we kicked off the podcast, but for folks that maybe haven't had the pleasure of meeting you, Gabby, why don't you give the audience a little introduction about yourself?
Sure. Nice to meet you and glad to be here. So like you said, I am Gabriela Martinez. I am originally from Honduras. I did my bachelor's degree in Zamorano, and then I did my master's and Ph.D. at North Carolina State University, working with Dr. 𝗴𝘂𝗲𝘁. And about a year ago, I joined CSA, where I'm being trained as a swine nutritionist. We work directly with customers. We help them design their nutrition program, and we help them to troubleshoot whenever they need us.
𝗴𝘂𝗲𝗀𝘁, the pioneer postbiotic for digestive health in pigs, brought to you by 𝗴𝘂𝗲𝗀𝘁. With over a century of experience in postbiotics for digestive health, 𝗴𝘂𝗲𝗀𝗁𝘁 contains heat-treated lactobacillus cell bodies and their metabolites. Stable by nature, 𝗴𝘂𝗲𝗀𝗁𝗁 can be easily stored and incorporated in compound feed.
Well, what a time to graduate and become a swine nutritionist. We certainly have had some opportunistic times, if you want to look at it that way, when it comes to feed cost. You certainly fill a very important role in the industry right now with ingredient prices and overall diet costs being where they've been the last 18 months. So, Gabby, I know you have a lot of expertise in the area of feeding fiber. Why don't you talk to us about what you hear from the field? What are the pain points related with producers' feeding strategies, specifically as it relates to fiber feeding in sows?
Yeah, sure. So as we probably all know by now, fiber has become like a standard feeding strategy to apply in sows during gestation because of the benefits of, keeping the sows calmer, especially when you are controlling their feed intake and you're controlling their weight gain, and to avoid farrowing problems at parturition and such. When I did my PhD thesis, I had the opportunity to do some work with sugar beet pulp and soy hulls in sows, kind of like comparing both roles for those type of fibers, because as you know, soy hulls tends to be more like an insoluble fiber source, and sugar beet pulp is a very good soluble fiber source. And we did found very good results with sugar beet pulp, but unfortunately, that source is not cannot be applied here in the U.S. due to cost management. It would be very expensive for producers to apply that. So what many of our customers usually do is they use soy hulls depending on the availability that they have of that source. They use DDGs, they use wheat, or a combination a little bit between DDGs and soy hulls. And that's kind of like what we're seeing here in the U.S. yet. And they carry it out all through gestation. And when they can, they provide fiber until the day of farrowing, and then they transition to a lactation feed. Some farms, they cannot do that. They can only do it until they transfer the sow to the lactation barn. So I guess that that would be my input on that question.
Do producers on sow farms, I should say nutritionists and producers on sow farms, do they focus on fiber feeding more with the gestation diets or more with the lactation diets, or both are pretty equally important?
Well, we do concentrate in providing fiber during gestation, yes. Some of the producers, they like to keep a little bit of that byproduct in lactation just for the sow to keep acclimated per se to using that byproduct. But we don't put a lot. We don't go over, 70 pounds in the diets, not more, because we don't want to dilute the energy in the diet during lactation. That's when we want the sow to eat all that she can. So, but yeah, some of producers, they do have a little bit of fiber on their diets. They think it helps the sow with constipation. So we do practice that with some customers, not with others.
You mentioned, soluble versus insoluble fiber. And as I understand it, the pig does have a little bit of ability through hind gut fermentation to actually get some energy out of fiber. So we think of it as not necessarily an energy source, but as I understand it, for the pig, it can be a limited energy source. In our current situation with very high cost energy sources, namely high cost corn, do nutritionists ever look at adjusting the fiber amount and see some energy value in there that, at least from a dollars and cents perspective, makes sense to adjust? So maybe feeding more fiber simply because that is the cheapest source of additional energy we can find right now.
Yeah, so far, I'm not familiar if there's any work related to the cost of energetic value of fiber. But I mean, we definitely, it's something that we consider when we implement fiber in the diets.
How about fiber feeding strategies as it relates to sow mortality? Certainly sow mortality is an area of big concern for pig producers today. Are there things they can do to make their sow mortality better or worse, specifically as it relates to fiber feeding practices in the sow farm?
Yeah, fiber is one of the options that you could explore to try and reduce your sow mortality. Usually when people think about fiber, they relate it to stillborn, because it helps to accelerate the farrowing process. If it doesn't, then the sow gets retained, and that gets tied up a little bit with sow mortality. So definitely keeping a high concentration of fiber during gestation, especially if you are able to do it during the transition period, that's something that could help. There was a meta-analysis from Dr. 𝗴𝘂𝗲𝘁 that I don't think it was published, but his lab determined that sows to get a normal or optimal consumption of fiber was about 500 grams per day. But after that, you would start losing the benefit of the fiber as a strategy. So I would say that to keep fiber at a 500 grams per day supplementation, that's something that could definitely help to reduce sow mortality if you take into account the stillborn risk of the sow. But that topic involves a lot of other things that it's not just related to fiber. It could be also farm management. It can be other nutrition options that we're not aware of yet.
How about special considerations, Gabby, for a producer that feeds pelleted diets to their sows? Does the pelleting process, the conditioner, the temperatures, the pressure, does that change the solubility of the fiber at all? Or does that change how you would formulate a diet in terms of what fiber you'd use or how much fiber you'd use, just simply based on whether it's pelleted or not pelleted?
You would have to take in consideration the characteristic of the fiber itself. So, for example, wheat can be used as a source to get more pelleting. I mean, a better pellet quality. Soy hulls tends to be a little bit fluffier too. So, from a pelleting standpoint, you would have to take into consideration those characteristic profiles of the fiber in order for you to use it as a pelleted form. But most out of the producers, they use mash diets per se versus pelleted. But yeah, I know that there are a couple of ones that prefer pellet.
Salmonella presents significant challenges to pig health and performance and poses food safety risks to humans. As the first and only vaccine offering live attenuated strains of both Salmonella cholerae and Typhimurium, Enterosol Salmonella TC from Boehringer Ingelheim protects pigs against both serotypes with a single oral dose. Talk to your Boehringer Ingelheim representative to learn more.
Well, in today's high cost situation, and not just high cost for the feed cost, right? It's high cost for your labor, high cost for your utilities, high cost for your insurance, if you can get it. I think the sow producer needs to be cost conscious today and take a look at all sorts of different strategies that maybe are different than what we did previously, but may have a value proposition given the economics of today's industry. Gabby, it's a very important topic, and I really appreciate you coming on and sharing your information with us.
Yeah, thank you. Glad to be here, and thanks for the invitation.
Yeah, thanks for coming on the show. And to our audience, thank you for listening to the Swine Health Blackbelt Podcast. Please visit the website at 𝗴𝗂𝗲𝗁𝗂𝗁.com, and don't forget to subscribe to the podcast so that you catch every episode. For Dr. Gabby Martinez, I'm Dr. 𝗴𝗂𝗀𝗁𝗁. Thanks, and have a great rest of your day.
Hey, everybody. We're always searching for the latest and greatest research to share each week. If you have a swine health-related research trial and would like to come on the show and talk about it, share it with us, please feel free to email the research to hello@wisenetics.com. That's HELLO@WISENETIX.com.